welcome back to episode 20 or 33 here of the Bullpen. Kind of in the busy part of the summer now with events happening and then wrapping up the high school season. But the past couple days and last week we came out with our All-State teams, our Player of the Year award winner. So yeah, just kind of getting into it. Like we'll talk through some contenders for our Player of the Year and kind of honorable mentions from the All-State teams that didn't make the cut. But how are you guys doing? I know we've had some events and things like that these past few weeks, but how's it going?
Tyler always likes to jump in, so I was giving him the floor there. I'm doing good, Gavin. How are you doing? Yeah, events are
I'm
full
all good.
swing. Yeah, what's up?
I'm all good. Yeah, I'm good.
I'm great. Chase Burns debuted for the Reds last night. It was absolutely electric. So I'm in a great mood. I'm in an absolutely great mood right now. My Reds are playing good. I know probably the majority of the people that listen to this podcast don't care. But no, I'm good.
Yeah, and then so last Thursday we released our Player of the Year. We ended up going with Quinn Chambeau, and I know that was kind of a tough decision for us to make because it's obviously a huge honor, and we want to try and get it right. And there were a ton of names that were in the mix that had really good numbers, really big years that were definitely up for consideration. So I don't know if you guys want to kind of get into that or mention any names or however you want to go about it. But I know it was a tough choice for us, but we ultimately landed on Chambeau.
Yeah, I could definitely start here. First off, like Quinn Chambeau definitely deserved the award, at least in our minds. Talking through it, like he's been, one of the top catchers in the state for the last 3 years, and all around too. When you factor in what he does with the bat, but then defensively, it's as good as I've seen in the last 10, however many years I've been doing this. It's elite behind the plate. He impacts the game every single inning, every single pitch, that he's playing with what he does behind the plate. He limits the running game. He also will throw behind runners and pick up outs and steal outs, and let alone just what he does for his pitch presentation and handling the arms. And I think that's really, for us, talking through it, looking at what Libertyville did on the mound this year, not just one guy, because Josh Holst, absolutely incredible year. His numbers speak for themselves. He was a first team All-Stater. Pitched in the championship game of the 4A state finals for Libertyville. But you look at Chase Lockwood, who was also an All-Stater for us. And then you look at their entire staff, the Brady Bunicks of the world. They went about 10 deep, and I want to say only one of the arms that threw for them on the entire year had an ERA above a 1.5. Looking at their year-end stats. So, I want to
Drew,
say
can
their
I hop
team
in?
ERA was a 1.1 or a 1 flat.
I have those numbers pulled up. So their team pitching stats at the end of the year: 254 innings, a combined 36-4 record. Gave up 64 runs all year. 40 of those were earned. 301 strikeouts, only 92 walks, a 1.1 team ERA, and a sub-1 WHIP. As a team, they had a .98 WHIP. So as a team for a pitching staff.
So obviously they have talented individuals, towing the rubber for them. But at the same time, I think you have to give some credit there to the catcher. The guy that's logging all the innings behind the plate. And then for him to do what he did offensively, the way he just presented and carried that team in the playoffs, and then to cap it off with a state title. Just extremely, extremely impressive stuff from Quinn Chambeau. Very proud that we were able to name him Player of the Year. I think that's going to be one we'll look back on and remember that year and what he meant to Libertyville and the run they made in the playoffs, winning their first ever state title. But, Gavin, you mentioned it. I don't remember an all-state, a Player of the Year and all-state having this many tough choices. Right at the top of the list, Enzo Infelice for Providence Catholic. He was a guy we talked about a ton. And full disclosure out there to the public, if Providence makes it to state and Enzo, goes off in state, it'd be hard not to give it to him. When it's that close and we're looking at separators, that I think was one of the biggest reasons because Enzo was nails in the playoffs. I know Tyler, you saw him have some huge hits in the supers. I saw him in the sectional final, barrel up 101, right back up the middle. Looked like he was unfazed, and all he did all season was hit. All he's done all his career is hit. So, that was one for me. Another guy I wanted to throw out there because I think he impacted a club just as much as pretty much anybody else on this list is Hayden Bernruder at Triad. What he did on the mound and with the bat was extremely impressive. The numbers were crazy. He didn't throw a ton of innings on the mound because I think early on in the year he was primarily used as a reliever and then transitioned into a starter. But he was striking out two guys an inning, hit for a ton of power, had like 9 triples. Um, that's one name that I think was high on the list. And then, like Hammett, you called it out before the season. Like Connor Essenberg was your pick to click for the year, and he had crazy numbers on both sides of the ball, like Bernruder, like a ton of these guys that we're going to be talking about. But they got knocked out first round in the playoffs. And it's one of those things where if they make a little bit of a run, if he carries them, if he pitches a couple huge games in the playoffs, like it's going to be hard not to give him the award. Shoot. Brandon Shannon and Josh Holst were two guys that we were talking about. I don't know if you guys see anybody else on this list. One guy we were talking about his career numbers just being crazy, Tyler.
Yeah, Fauski.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, like if Naz goes on a huge run and Fauski leads them to state, he's another guy. It would have been really hard not to really pencil him in as player of the year. And I mean, you mentioned Brandon Shannon, like did it all year for McHenry. I was lucky enough; I got to see him pitch a couple times. Watching him pitch in the state semifinals against Brother Rice, knocks Brother Rice, out of the playoffs essentially, and watching him pitch that Friday night, it was like, wow, like that's probably pitcher of the year or player of the year. And then you watch Holst the following night in the state finals, does it on the mound, does it with the bat, and it's kind of like, wow, that might be player of the year as well. So it's really hard, and it's probably not a perfect process, but I think it's a great problem to have. I think it speaks to the talent that's in this state, throughout this state, at every corner of this area. So no, that's what I have.
Every year is different. There's been years in the past where Owen Murphy cemented himself as player of the year like midway through the year. He had thrown like 2 perfect games. He like basically set a record with home runs. I think he hit like 18 his senior season and then did what he did on the mound. It was like, okay, there's nobody else that this award should go to than Owen Murphy. And this year, we're all going into the playoffs like, man, this is an open race, So it was just a different dynamic, a different vibe. I definitely think the playoff runs had a big impact in this year's selection. And like I said, those were just a couple names. There's other names that we're going to get through on this list. And I mean, any name that you see on that first team All-State, like that's a guy that could easily be a candidate for player of the year. These numbers that we got sent in and searched for and grinded to dig up, and they're video game numbers. There's crazy numbers. And I think, Gavin, like that is the crux of this podcast is, hey, everybody, got their love on our first team, second team, third team. And then other awards that go out, like the IHS BCA puts out their awards for 4A All-State, 3A All-State, 2A. But like, there's guys that don't get mentioned in our All-State that I get emails on that 100%, it like hurts our soul to not have them on the list. Like we would love to give everybody on the list that has these numbers because we're leaving crazy good numbers off. And we're just trying to promote and highlight the guys that were the best players in the state throughout the spring. And there's guys that aren't on this list that deserve to be honorable mentions. That I think we want to list off. We want to talk about certain guys that we had really hard conversations on. And some of it too is like position specific. Some positions are just more loaded than others. The arms this year, I felt like were impossible to choose from. There are guys that had over 100 strikeouts, on like high level, like 3A, 4A, the big school classes that didn't make our list. Guys with 1-1 ERAs where their teams were in our Power 25. So it was a loaded list. It is an extremely hard challenge every year. And there probably are plenty of quality debates and discussions to be had about guys that should have been on the list that got left off, guys we chose. Now we have reasons why we chose guys and didn't choose guys, and honestly, like team success, prospect status, defense, our eye test, who we thought the best, most impactful players in the spring were, all go into this among a ton of other things. Level of competition is a huge factor. So there's just a ton of dynamics, and I think hopefully just as we talk about some of these guys, we can give some guys some love that absolutely certainly deserve it.
Yeah, and I think we're just gonna break it down by arms, two-way players, and some position players too. But if we want to kick it off with some arms, like I'll start things off with normal community right-handed pitcher Jonah Roper. He's a senior going to Rock Valley. Coming back this season, maybe a little bit earlier in the year, midway through the season, like coming off an injury, and he came back and impacted that normal community team throughout the playoffs, but also throughout the year. Through 41 innings for them, went 5-0, had 52 strikeouts, 12 walks, a 1.54 ERA, and a .68 WHIP. Really good season for him. Really helped normal community get to the state finals. Impacted that team a lot. Mid-80s arm. I think he was up to 86 or 87 towards the end of the year, but just a strike thrower and really helped lead that team to state.
I mean, Gabe, do you want to stay right there? Do you want to go with Landon too?
Yeah. I mean, they had another arm in Landon Corbin, right-handed arm, low to mid-80s guy that was a really kind of like their main relief arm that would come out for them, and he threw 41.2 innings on the year. He had 8 wins, 56 strikeouts, 12 walks, a .67 ERA, and a .86 WHIP. Only gave up 4 earned runs on the year. And another guy, played big roles for them throughout the playoffs and throughout the spring as well.
What I love about both those guys is how versatile it seems both of them are. I'm sure both guys started at one point. Each of those guys have saves. So to me, that's super impressive. The ability to do whatever is asked of you by your coach and by your team, whatever they need you to do. Hey, maybe this midweek game, we need you to start. Hey, we need you to, close this conference game. Give us a win, save other arms in our bullpen. To me, that's really impressive, and has got to be a big reason why normal community made it as far as they did. And they took home third place for 4A.
Well, and I think just like the very interesting thing about normal community was we love their position guys. Going into the year, they lost Ethan Eberly. We were super high on their lineup. And to me, it was like if they got enough pitching, they could be as dangerous as anybody. And they got more than enough pitching. You look at what Gavin Swartz did. I mean, he made our all-state list, and his numbers were through the roof for being a junior and kind of taking that next step of the ace on that staff. And then what he did, that performance he had at state, to me, just kind of cemented that. So many big pitches and so many big spots. But normal community, what a great year for them. And they're going to be a team to watch for next year. I think that's a dangerous club when you start doing the way too early preseason Power 25 look.
I can hop in here. The arm I want to mention is Jake Reifenberg. We obviously talked a lot about playoff success playing a part in this, and Reifenberg certainly had that, helped lead Bennett to state. 2025, he's going to Northwestern now. 60 innings pitched, had a 5-3 record, only gave 36 hits all year, 11 earned runs, 83 strikeouts to just 22 walks in that span. Had a 1.28 ERA, and really before the year, we ranked Bennett as our preseason number 25 because of guys like Jake Reifenberg, and they also had Gino Zagoric as well, and we kind of said before the year, hey, if those two arms, when it gets to playoff time, take off, they can help carry Bennett to state, and that's exactly what they did. But, I wanted to shout out Jake, and it just goes to show how hard it is to make this list. But what a year from him.
Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, we knew going into it that, they were going to have arms, especially that two-headed monster at the top, and they didn't have the best start. I mean, I know they kind of skidded a little bit, but like we said, I mean, they made a push, they made a run. those two guys leading the charge, and that's what it takes. That's what it takes in the playoffs. But I can hop in here. I'm going to go with Greg Campitelli, mostly because he was Napoleon was very high on him going into the year, but I think he exceeded his expectations by quite a bit. I mean, he ended up going 67.2 innings with a 10-1 record. He also had a save, just 48 hits allowed, 15 earned runs, punched out 56 against just 13 walks, and he had a 1.55 ERA with a .9 WHIP. So, I mean, like I said, exceeded expectations, kind of turned into the ace of that staff that had a great year. And I mean, it's just great to see for that kid because, I mean, like I said, Napoleon was high on him, and I'm just sure for his own confidence levels, like he's going to be, that only can do good things for him.
There's two arms on this list that, when you say it, kind of like hurts your soul to not have them on the list or whatever, however you want to put it. Two guys for me, Chase Zidlicki at Nazareth, and then Riley Golden at Prairie Ridge. And you could probably throw Jake Matisse in that mix too. But like, for me, I want to start with Zidlicki and Golden. Man, Zidlicki came into the year, just hearing Coach Milano talk, like, not as their ace, but just continued to kind of dominate and pitch better and better every time out. And by the end of the year, that kid like turned into their ace. Through basically 60 innings, went 9-1 for Naz. In 60 innings, only gave up 36 hits. He struck out 85, and he walked 28 for a 1.05 ERA. I mean, it's a minuscule ERA. It is way more strikeouts than innings pitched. It's way less hits than innings pitched. It's all state numbers. Like Chase, you have a beef. Like it is super hard to pick these teams. That's an absolutely incredible year. Like crushed me to not have your name on that list, but like at some point we have to cut it off. Like we chose 6 arms for the second team, 6 arms for the third team. It was just one of those things where it was like, this is a very hard cut. And we went back and forth on who should be on that list, who shouldn't be. But Chase, you were certainly a guy that we talked very, very strongly about. And then Riley Golden, Prairie Ridge's ace. He's been their ace. He went 7-2 this year, and he threw 58 2/3. Only gave up 33 hits, struck out 85, just like Zidlicki, in less innings. 25 walks and a 1.10 ERA. Just stupid good numbers for a team that was one of the top teams in the Fox Valley. They were in our Power 25 throughout the year, and an incredible year for that young man who's going to Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So, like, just so many hard decisions, and these guys deserve the love. And I would love to not even have this honorable mention call, and be able to just put these guys on the list. But you have to cut it off. You have to keep it a tight list. And with that comes really hard decisions. Like Luke Menzik, he had a 0.76 ERA. Now to us, like he threw 46 innings, so a little bit less than some of these other guys that made the list. And he struck out less than, a guy an inning, basically a guy an inning. So it's really hard when you start talking about video game numbers and how you do it, because Luke Menzik has the prospect status. He's an absolute stud on the mound. Love the way he carries himself. Love the way he competes. He's been nails for Lincoln Way Central. He's going to have probably a great college career, a great future. But yeah, just another tough call. So sorry guys for kind of taking over there and rambling, but man, those were some that I felt really strong about.
I gotta take it over to some 1A baseball here for Altamont. Cade Millville. He is a name that we've kind of had on our eye on since the state playoffs, the state finals. I think that was two years ago when Altamont had made it, and he was playing in the state finals for Altamont. I actually think he had a home run to left field for them in their semifinal game. But anyway, this year on the mound, uncommitted 2026, threw 57.1 innings, struck out 104, only walked 5, allowed 5 earned runs on the year, which was good for a .61 ERA. and a .698 whip. So a really, really good season on the mound for Millville. And again, numbers like that, it's hard to keep him off All-State. But really good season. We're listing him here as a honorable mention.
One thing that I love, you mentioned, 1A baseball or whatever, Gavin, but as we collect these stats and reach out to these high school coaches and we get this bevy of, information and sheets that come through, what I love doing is seeing the guys that we maybe don't know a ton on or have a ton on or who's been to an event and like tracking them down. Be like, hey, who's still out there across the state that we're missing? And there were some really impressive names like on this, I say names, really impressive stats that make it on this list that make you be like, okay, we're going to follow this guy. This guy instantly is a guy we've got to do our research on, make sure he's on all of our lists. Because it really is something to see when you see these stats come through. And we know we don't know everybody out there. It's our goal. Like, that's what we're trying to do. But it just speaks to how good the baseball is and how there are studs in all pockets of the state when you see this list come through. And then when you dissect, who makes those 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A IHSBCA teams. But we can keep going. That's just one thing that I wanted to mention.
I kind of want to add to that. And when you said that, it made me think of a guy like Martin Ledbetter at Hinckley Big Rock. Like, I feel like over his high school career, like, shout out to his head coach for sending in his numbers, because I think that personally, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that's kind of how we got to know his name, because he always had big numbers on the mound and at the plate. And we probably wouldn't have known that had his coach not sent those numbers in. So I thought that was super important that they do that, because we find out a lot about these guys.
100%. I mean, the key is getting them, invited to the proper, Illinois State games so they can be seen by coaches, and getting them to the right events for us that can shine an even brighter light on these guys, and hopefully be like a needle mover in their recruiting process. Get them seen by those coaches at that level that they fit in at. Really is kind of like the biggest goal with that Illinois State games, and there's so many players that need to be there. And the whole state needs to be represented. Like, that's the whole goal of that event. And represented by all levels of college as well. Hopefully we've got high-level schools there and high-level names, and then some names that just deserve to be seen by any school. And we know could play at the next level. But and also, like, we work really hard to dig up year-end stats. So there are certain guys that like don't make this list because we just didn't get year-end stats that we're able then to correctly evaluate, properly look at, it's hard when you get maybe somebody's stats before playoffs and then they played 4 games in the playoffs and you really don't know what it looks like. Or an arm who had really good stats throughout the year, but his last 2 starts were subpar. And it happened at the biggest point of the year and stuff like that. So it's just, if you don't have the year-end stats, first off, we dig extremely hard to get them, but if we've dug and we can't get them, there's no way really to put them on the list. I mentioned him earlier, talking about Chase Zidlicki and Riley Golden, but like Jake Matisse, he's been a guy long on our list, and he's been a guy that's impacted the Caravan over at Mount Carmel since he was an underclassman, and we're super high on him. He's been nothing but a performer. Once again, was huge for Mount Carmel. Tyler, you saw him this spring, I want to say, in the playoffs.
Didn't see him in the playoffs, but
okay.
Our guy Kai Formella did. Unfortunately probably saw, I think, his only loss all year, which pretty impressive because that was early in the spring. But yeah, I mean, Jake Matisse kind of thrusted into being the ace for Mount Carmel this year. Obviously, we've talked about it at length, but they did not have Ian Tosi this year, who'd been their ace for the last 2 years. So thrust into a very big role for Mount Carmel, pitching in the CCL Blue. He ended up winning CCL Blue Pitcher of the Year, which believe that award is more for what you do in conference. It's not, all-encompassing of their entire year, but had a really impressive year, 63 2/3. Like I said, 8-1 record, had 1 save, Get 45 hits, 20 earned runs, had 63 strikeouts, just 17 walks. Good for a 2.19 ERA and a sub 1 whip at .99 on the dot. So, really good year for Jake. We've kind of touched on it a little earlier, but like looking ahead to next year, a team to pencil as like a team that's going to be really high on our preseason Power 25 is going to be Mount Carmel, especially assuming they're going to get Ian Tosi back next year. What I saw from Connor Ellentenney in the playoffs, what they're going to continue to get out of Jake Matisse, it's really hard not to be very, very high on Mount Carmel going into next spring.
You know, Jake Matisse won CCL Blue Pitcher of the Year, and that's obviously a huge, huge honor. It's one of the top conferences in the state. He's clearly pitching against some of the top teams in the state, some of the top lineups. And for him to win that award, I think, you know, he was the one team that beat the one arm that beat Brother Rice during conference. So, you know, that's a huge honor, and that's why he's in the mix talking about him for these all-state teams. But when you really, you know, put his numbers up against everybody else, it was a little too hard. You know, when we're factoring in where the heck do we cut this list off and who's going to make it, doesn't mean we don't love the guy. But Jake Matisse was yet another hard decision. Brody Scheffler down at Springfield, I know they had a tough just season overall as a team, but he was by far the biggest bright spot and one of the top arms, you know, in Springfield right now. Like, that's a name to know for any college out there. It's an upper 80s fastball. He's got good stuff, but in 63 innings, he struck out 102, 22 walks, and had a 1.22 ERA. You know, his record doesn't speak all that great for his year, but man, really, really impressive year out of Brody Scheffler. Just missed the cut. And then one other name I mentioned like earlier, like these guys that are striking out over 100 guys in like a year is crazy to me. You know, pretty much no arm throws more than 70 to 75 innings in a spring, and that really are only the guys that make it, you know, their team makes it to state because they have that prolonged playoff run. But to be striking out 100 guys or more in a season is just impressive stuff. And Jackson Heidemann at Harlem was one of those guys who did that. He pitched to a 1.96 ERA. In 68 innings, he struck out 108. So that's another guy that also, you know, we've seen him. We're following him. He's a performer. He's an in-game, you know, guy that gets it done and he's a tough at bat. Like, hitters don't see him great, and the numbers speak to that. So, heck of a year up there in the Rockford area for Jackson Heidemann, but I think that was the last arm, at least for me, Gavin, that, you know, and there's other arms on here, not to say that like any other arms we were looking at aren't worth mentioning, because shoot, Peter Mulhern at Palatine through 70 innings, struck out 95, had a 1.89 ERA, and he's almost not even getting talked about on our honorable mention. So many names to list, so many awesome performances across the state, and there's a bunch of high level guys in Illinois right now. It's really fun to see.
Well, another thing about those two guys, Drew, I mean, we mentioned how many people they struck out. Look how many people they walked. They both had like a 5-to-1 walk ratio, which is just great to see. Like, being a former pitcher, like, I know, at least I love to throw strikes. Like, it really grinds my gears now to see how many like walks, I guess, are happening nowadays. So to see people are still throwing a ton of strikes, keep the game moving faster, keep them cleaner, it's always good.
Yeah, so looking at some two-way guys here, got a couple names listed here, and I see we have one under the position player name, and that is Cam Appenzeller at Glenwood. We can kind of include him in this two-way mix, but just full transparency, we didn't get like year-end stats on him, so we didn't really have his complete pitching numbers. So I think it was hard for us to include that just because we didn't know what his final year numbers were. But what we did have were some of his hitting numbers. And he actually had a really good year at the plate for Glenwood. He hit 440, had a 506 OBP, 7 doubles, a triple, 6 homers, 24 RBIs, and 25 runs scored. And I know that on the mound he had some really, really good outings. He was limited this year, but we just didn't have those final year numbers for him on the mound.
Well, and I think those offensive stats could be even more impressive. if we had his final year-end stats as well, because I think that was going into the playoffs or maybe before the playoffs. So he may have added an extra base hit or two. But yeah, he really stepped up this year with the bat. And the power numbers was kind of what shocked me. Like he was leaving the yard quite a bit, and it's a left-handed swing, and we've all talked about his athleticism. So like it's a good swing. He's just that talented on the mound where he's not really gonna have to worry about the bat in the future. But he
And
runs the bases good too. Like he's just a supreme athlete.
could you imagine too if he added 20 pounds and had that swing and what his numbers would have been with that, strength behind him too? Like, I'm sure he
It's
would have had
gonna
an
be
awesome
fun to
year.
see what he can do on the mound when he adds that
Yeah.
strength, is fully healthy, kind of gets rid of the other sports, the basketball in the winter, the golf in the fall, although he'll probably still play a ton of golf because he's going to be a PO and he'll probably be hitting the links all the time. But it'll be fun to see when he does dedicate, in that, college or pro weight room system and can tack on that 20 pounds because the stuff is as good as it gets. The athlete's as good as it gets. He's got a bright future. Whether he makes an all-state team or not, it's not going to affect what he does down the road. And he's going to be a guy that, to me, has one of the highest ceilings coming out of this 2025 class.
One name that stands out to me here, Brock Fearday from St. Anthony. Doing it on both sides of the ball. Saw him earlier in the year. He's another basketball guy, right? Seems like a
Yeah, I
common
believe
theme.
so, yep.
He hit 430 with a 557 on base and 753 slug. 7 home runs, 26 RBIs, 28 runs scored. I mean, 25 walks as well. That's impressive. And on the mound, though, 54.2 innings. He had 5 wins, punched out 73 against just 22 walks, and he had a 1.79 ERA. At the 2A level, having somebody like that can kind of take the role of 2 players, 2 really good players, basically a good arm and a good bat, like that's super, super valuable. And clearly it's paid dividends. Like he won a state title 2 years ago, and he was another key factor for them this year as well.
One guy I want to mention, and we've long known him as, a premier arm. He's going to Kentucky, is Toby Peterson out of Palatine. Like, I thought what he did with the bat this spring was super impressive. Palatine went 27-10. So it was a good squad this year. Batted .393, had a .496 on base, .696 slugging, good for almost a 1,200 OPS. But he had 7 bombs, 33 RBIs, 38 runs scored, 9 doubles, 2 triples. And then on the mound, he struck out 90 guys in 47 2/3 innings. So nearly 2 guys an inning. It's really impressive out of Toby, but I thought what he did with the bat this year especially was really special.
I feel like I remember seeing some really big stat lines from him, at least on the mound at the beginning of the year. At least we were getting some sent to us, like 10 strikeout games, maybe 1 walk or no walks or something like that. So that's not surprising to see that he's having 2 strikeouts an inning, or almost 2 strikeouts an inning.
Yeah, I'll just touch on this last name we got listed here is Lance Cuddy out of Coal City. A guy who did it, again, both sides of the ball. 422, 566, 725, triple slash, good for nearly a 1,300 OPS. 8 doubles, a triple, again, 7 bombs, 28 ribbies, 43 runs scored, and then he had 13 stolen bases as well. Then on the mound, he was Coal City's ace all year. I remember in the playoffs there was a huge game, them versus Coal City versus Wilmington. He was going head to head with Lucas Rink, who I believe was a 3rd-team All-State selection for us out of Wilmington, but it was like 0-0. He unfortunately just had 1 bad pitch. They lost 1-0, but it just kind of goes to show the year he had on both sides of the ball. And on the mound, 50 2/3, 6-3 record, 54 hits, 20 earned runs, 86 strikeouts, just 11 walks. Hammond, I know you were talking about the lack thereof of walks, which is a good thing with a lot of these arms. 2.76 ERA and a 1.283 WHIP. So really great year from Lance. What's nice is Coal City will get him back again next year. So excited to see what he continues to do.
All right, and then looking at some position players that missed the cut The first thing that I'm going to mention here, and there's actually quite a few that I wanted to kind of get in here on, but Gavin Aubrey at Alleman High School up in the Quad Cities, or I believe a 2A program. He was one of those guys that throughout the year, their coach submitted a bunch of their guys for the Diamond Notes each week, or I guess Player of the Week, but they ultimately got put in the Diamond Notes each week. But Aubrey was in there almost, it seemed like every week. But on the year, he hit .437, had 5 home runs, 43 RBIs, 2 triples, 13 doubles, 34 runs scored, 21 walks, only 6 strikeouts, and 21 stolen bases. So he had a really good year to cap off his high school career. So that was good to see. But, yeah, guys, go ahead if you have anything else you want to get in on before I got a few more that I want to mention too. But
Yeah,
one name I really liked, and I'm sorry, Pete, if I'm jumping in and you were getting in there, but Drew Church at Montini was a guy that, I know we were eyeing and talking about a lot. It's just a tough list to make, but Drew Church to me, like, the offensive numbers are good, but I look at it too. Hey, we've seen him. I got my eyes on Montini this spring. Like, it's one of the best shortstop defenders in the state. That should play a role in, all state selections. Like, we're out at these games. We're seeing it for a reason. We're evaluating these prospects. So not only should the numbers and what they do offensively, but if a guy's a liability at their position, that should play a factor. And if the guy is excellent at his position, that should play a factor. Or one of the best, catchers in Quinn Shambo, or center fielders in Patrick Connors. So to me, Drew Church, gets in the mix. He hit under 400. He did have some strikeouts, but 10 doubles, 2 triples, 6 home runs, 36 RBIs, 39 runs scored. He also stole 24 bases. So he's a guy that definitely, deserves some love, had a really, really impactful season for Montini. Going to EIU, that was one guy that stood out for me.
And he's always been really impactful, even just with the glove. So I think hitting 390 or 380, basically, that's really solid for him. So good year for him. I want to mention Josh Zeimer. I hope I said that right. Zeimer from Glenbard East. He slashed 536, 641, 833 with 2 home runs, 27 RBIs. He had 19 doubles on the year, which really stands out. 40 runs scored, 25 walks to just 9 strikeouts. He was voted Upstate 8 Conference East Division Player of the Year. And the number that really stands out for me there is he hit 618 in conference. So just absolute video game numbers. Just really, really impressive for him.
Well, just to give context, it's really hard to make, the infield list for All-State. We all played high school ball. Majority of the time, the best players on these teams are probably the shortstops, right? And that's what a lot of these guys are shortstops. It just kind of goes to show how, like Drew's saying, the video game numbers that you basically have to make this list. Tyler Trapp for me at Lane Tech, right? Chicago Public League Player of the Year, batted almost 400 at 397, had a 519 on base, so he's getting on base, more than half the time. 675 slug, had nearly a 1,200 OPS, 15 doubles, 4 triples, 4 jacks, 27 RBI, scored 50 runs. He was their leadoff guy for Lane Tech all year, and 14 stolen bases. And then he's also going to play a quality. He's a quality glove up the middle. So that's one guy that was sticking out to me. Again, it just kind of goes to show how ridiculous a lot of these guys' numbers are that even just get left off the list. But Tyler Trapp was one that was really sticking out to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Normal Community's Drew Stevens. Hit 376 on the year, had 4 homers, 32 RBIs, 22 runs scored, a triple, 8 doubles, 20 walks, and a 975 fielding percentage. He was catching for them and playing first. It kind of went back and forth between him and Max Heineman. I know that towards the end of the year, and especially in the playoffs, you could tell that he was having some tough times with his hamstring, I believe it was. And then once it got to, I think it was a super sectional, I was there, and I think he really kind of hurt it, and they took him out of the game, and he didn't play. And then the state semifinal game, he did not play or start, But then I don't know what was it, guys. The fifth inning, maybe he came in for a pinch hit opportunity. I know it's like a really close game at the time. I can't remember the score, but I think there
It
was a
was
guy on
0-0,
base.
I
Zero
think.
zero. Was there a guy on
Yeah.
second or third, maybe?
Third, and if you
2
know he
outs.
had a fully functioning hamstring or whatever the ailment is, they would have scored that run. And who knows, normal community might have gone on to win that game. But sorry, Gav,
No,
continue.
yeah, and I think we were all impressed with just like him as a person and the grinder mentality. Like he sacrificed an injury basically and further injuring himself running down the line on that play, but he sacrificed that for his team in the state semifinals to hopefully help get them to state. I mean, they ultimately lost that semifinal game, but I just think it kind of shows like the type of player and like leader on that team that he was, and that he was willing to do that for those guys. And I think that just was awesome to see, but also just a good year for him as well. So he was one that missed the cut, but had a good season for the Ironman.
No, I love that shout out. I mean, we've been around Drew since, gosh, he was what, 12 or 13 at junior future games for us. Like, great kid. But what you talked about right there, like that, it's awesome. Like, it pains us to leave something like that off the list, right? Like, the type of heart that you have and the guts to do that for your team, it speaks a lot, not only about the player, but the person. So, love that shout out there, Drew. A catcher I want to talk about is Max Greamy down at Taylorville. Huge year for Max, bet at 519, 631 on base, which is absolutely absurd. A 785 slug, good for over a 1400 OPS, 9 doubles, 4 bombs, 22 RBIs, 29 runs scored, 23 walks, and then to me, what's impressive here is he had 18 stolen bases. Like, majority of the time in high school, your catcher's getting pitch ran for, getting that courtesy runner. So for Max to, wind up with 18 stolen bases, to me is super impressive. And we know he's good behind the dish as well defensively. So that's one guy I wanted to shout out.
The going through the list and picking all state, one thing that's I think over the years doing it, what you look for is it's great to have a good batting average, right? And one of the first numbers you look at is batting average. But man, like a lot of the difference in these guys with selecting these is the OBP, the on base. You like there's some guys that had a 380 batting average, which on this list would be, more towards the bottom, but they walked 40 times and, maybe got hit by a pitch 8 times and they're on base over, a 600 clip. And it's like, really, that's super impactful. And the OBP always kind of plays a little bit bigger of a role for me than the average. And then guys that walk more than they strike out, especially if you are a guy that hits for power and you're on this list and you've got a bunch of doubles and a bunch of home runs and you walk way more than you strike out, like that's really going to stand out there versus a guy that maybe walks and strikes out similar amount of time or strikes out more than he walks and doesn't hit for a ton of power. But maybe has like a really high batting average or something like that. So these are all like just little things that we look at. I look at stolen bases, I think, are huge. Like if you don't hit for a ton of power, well, if you're stealing a lot of bases and scoring a ton of runs, you're still impacting the team. And, that may outweigh somebody that hits for a lot of power, but doesn't maybe score a lot of runs or whatever it may be. But man, one name, Bo Gomrich, Althoff, Catholic down there. In the Metro East area, 477 average, 612 on base. Not only is he getting on base a lot with his bat, but he's also just finding ways to get the free 90. So just the on base right there, it's like, man, how's that guy not on that list? He had 6 triples, 4 home runs, 29 RBIs, 37 runs scored, and he walked 30 times to 9 strikeouts. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. It's even better than a 3-to-1 ratio. Like, Bo Gomrich was bringing it all spring. Jason Phillips at Plano set a school record for triples, had 7 triples, hit 474. He's got some of the best bat speed in the state. Very physical right-handed hitter. That's a guy that needs to be thrown out there. And then same high school as Jackson Heidemann, somebody put, Finn Stovall on this list. Harlem High School hit 482 in 110 at bats. 5 home runs, 12 doubles, 4 triples, 43 runs scored. He broke Harlem's single season hits record with 53. That pains us, to keep that guy off the list. So just yet another one that made it a hard decision for us. But they were all across the board.
Well, one more guy mentioning, above 600 OBP, Noah Summers from Freeport. He hit 515 with a 609 OBP, and he slugged 897, so basically 900. With 6 home runs, 47 RBIs. He had 2 triples, 15 doubles, 48 runs scored, and he also stole 23 bases. So, yeah, I mean, I think obviously like OBP and all that, like average is impressive too, but for me, a lot of the times, like, the separators can be like RBIs and runs scored and stolen bases. Like, those little things that just can add extra depth to the stats. Like, clearly here, like, those are crazy numbers. And like you said, it pains us to keep him off, but just an awesome year for that kid.
And big shout out to everybody that did make the list. I know we're not like bringing you up on the podcast, but that's the beauty of making that list. You're in our story. All your stats are put out there. Anybody that is curious to check it out, like, we've posted all the stories on the website. Go to prepbaseballillinois.com. Like, you will find everything you need to know there with little write-ups on the players and their stats from the season, broken down by positions. It was a painstaking process this year. These guys are probably sick of, seeing me and hearing my voice, just the amount of conversations we had going back and forth and looking at every different angle, and me calling out, we do look at players of the year in conferences, who won pitcher of the year in a certain conference, who won position player of the year, to make sure we have those guys at least in the conversation. Doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to make the list. But those names were clearly the most impressive names in those conferences this year. They should be paid attention to. But yeah, go check out the stories if you missed it. Player of the year story, and then Gavin, anything else you have to follow up there?
No, I mean, guys, I think this officially for us caps off the 2025 high school season. So it's a bittersweet goodbye to the high school year. But I mean, all the all-state teams out. This will probably be our last podcast talking about the high school season. So yeah, I mean, it was an awesome year. Appreciate all the coaches and the players and everyone involved that just made it a fun year, and I'm thankful we get to be included in that and be a part of it.
Huge shout out to the high school coaches out there that help make our lives a little bit easier throughout the spring with matchups. We're constantly, emailing about who's starting in certain, matchups that we're looking to go see, but diamond notes, daily roundups, player of the weeks that we put out there, year end, all state awards. Just huge shout out to those high school coaches that are diligent with it, that want their players to be recognized, that are all over sending us things in, a timely manner and double checking with us to make sure that we've gotten the stats for their guys and that they're year end and that they'll be, in the mix and all that stuff. And couldn't probably do it without that help. So thank you to everybody out there.
Well, and I just want to say, like, we're not really fully sure what this podcast is going to look like over the summer. So to anybody that's listening, like, feel free, comment on YouTube, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Like, give us suggestions for maybe what you guys want to see throughout the summer. I know it's a little different. Like, high school season is its own beast. We have plenty of stuff to talk about throughout the spring. So give us suggestions, give us feedback. Maybe there's a certain segment you really want to see us do, or I don't know, some sort of draft of, a topic of conversation you want to see us do. So give us ideas. We're certainly open to any and all suggestions. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys listening. That'll wrap up today's episode. We will see you guys next week for episode 34, but be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube, and then follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you guys listening as always, and we will see you next week.